Welcome, everyone, to our latest episode of the Shop Talk podcast for Santa Rosa County, where the shop is shop and the talk is talk and the podcast is podcast. And I'm sorry, Mike, I'm never going to remember what you say. I'm Sarah Whitfield. I'm the Communications and Media Relations Manager for Santa Rosa County. And today we have Sabrina White, our Assistant County Administrator / Budget Director / most awesome person ever. And I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit and tell a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you having me on. I know everyone wants to know about the numbers for the county. So I've been here almost 22 years now. I started as a student in college and have worked my way to administration as Assistant County Administrator. I've had some great leaders over the years who have mentored me and helped shape me. I love serving our citizens, serving our community. It's a love of mine, and I'm always grateful to give back and make a difference.
That's great. So you have a lot of history with the county. So you have seen how the budget has changed over many, many years.
Yes, that's right.
And that's what we're here to talk about today, a little bit about the budget, a little bit about property taxes, which is everyone's favorite subject. So why don't we go ahead and jump into it? Why don't you kind of give us a little bit background on property taxes, maybe how they're calculated, that sort of thing?
Sure. So the way property taxes work is your property is assessed. And so it's a multi-tiered process. So we have our property appraiser. He and his staff go out and determine the value of your property, the assessed value of your property. And then we have the Board of County Commissioners, and we also have the school district. We have several authorities in Santa Rosa County, and those authorities set the rate that is charged. So you have your property value, and then you have a rate, and those are multiplied together to determine the collection or the taxes that are going to be charged on your property. So we also have many exemptions, and those exemptions are approved through the state legislature. So again, it's multi-tiered, multifaceted, and so some of those exemptions that we have, for example, is we have the homestead exemption, which is $25,000. So let's say the value of your home is $100,000. And you have the $25,000 exemption, so that means you're only charged on $75,000 worth of that value, and it's based on $1,000. So you take 75,000, divide it by 1,000, and then you multiply that by our millage, which gets the amount of taxes that you pay.
Okay, so a lot of people who live here and have that homestead exemption, they probably know a lot about that. And if you've never applied for your homestead exemption and this is your only home, definitely apply for it. That's a lot of savings that go back into your pocket. But also, I had no idea there were so many other exemptions that already exist in the county. Yes. And how many actual millions of dollars that is for our residents. So if you wouldn't mind touching a little bit on some of the other exemptions that exist.
Sure. So, of course, we have the widow's exemption, which, of course, we want to make sure those elderly are paying less, if you will. They're getting some benefit. So that's roughly, those total exemptions are roughly $600,000. So that's revenue we do not see because of those exemptions. That's how that kind of works. We also have the additional homestead exemption. So if you're at a certain value, you qualify. And so that's another $25,000. And that's roughly over $7 million in revenues that we do not see because of that exemption. And that is also right now what the state is looking at, is having an additional homestead exemption. And this does not apply to school district property taxes. So they have kind of made the decision at the state level that they're going to leave the school district whole. They're going to leave public safety and the sheriff whole, if you will. So it will not affect those property tax collections, but it will affect the property tax collections for the county commissioners, and your municipalities. So those services that we provide are your parks and your facilities, your emergency management, your 911 calls, your animal services, libraries. There's a whole host of services that are provided based on property tax.
So that is a very educational component that I don't think a lot of people, they may not know about. They may be very educated, which is awesome. We love it when our residents are very educated on everything.
Absolutely.
We encourage that. But why don't we talk about where our property taxes go and what they fund?
That's a great question, Sarah. So thank you for asking. So to begin with, there are multiple authorities in the county, as I previously mentioned. And so you have county government, which is the BOCC. We have the law enforcement, MSTU. You have your municipalities, you have the school district, and you have Northwest Florida Water Management. So roughly 32% of the property taxes collected in Santa Rosa County goes to the BOCC to provide general services, general government services like your libraries, your parks, things of that nature. Roughly 47% goes to the school district to provide public schools in the county. Just under 5% goes to the municipalities, which we have Gulf Breeze, the city of Milton, and the town of Jay. And 14% of it goes directly to paying for the sheriff's deputies. So there are other components related to public safety, the jail, court security, all of the sheriff's dispatchers. All of that is paid out of the general BOCC county government. But those green uniforms out on the street serving our residents every day, that's paid from the MSTU at roughly 14%.
Yeah, and that MSTU is fairly new. That's something that the board decided on, was it last year?
Yes. So, and again, it's all for transparency. So when you receive your tax bill, you can see how much is going to the sheriff's deputies, to public safety. All in all, of the funding that we receive for property tax, roughly 58% of our revenue related to property tax is going to public safety. So sheriff's deputies, 911, emergency management, all of those items that we have in place and services that we have in place to make sure our citizens are safe.
That's great. So we not only use property taxes to fund things, there are other sources of revenue that the county is actively using. Why don't you tell us a little bit about grants, matching funds, sales tax, those kind of other revenue streams that we take advantage of?
So we have multiple recurring revenues. Several are in the general fund. So for example, you pay 7% sales tax in Santa Rosa County. 6% of that goes to the state. And then the state will return a portion of that to all of the counties. And there's a calculation and factor that they factor into how they determine how much comes back. But we receive roughly $19 million of that back to Santa Rosa County of that 6% that you pay. And that goes to fund the general fund as well as property taxes. So it's paying for court security, jail, libraries, parks. We also have the half cent, which is part of that 7%, and then the school district has a half cent. So total, it equates to 7% that you're paying in sales tax. In our county, roughly 25 to 30% of that is paid for by tourists or those traveling the interstate. stopping and getting gas. So sales tax, the discretionary half-cent, goes directly to infrastructure items. So it cannot pay salaries, it cannot pay for those things that are kind of behind the scenes. It must go directly into tangible things for our citizens. And so we receive roughly $15 million a year for that, and that's what's part of our road paving plan. It's most of the time turn lanes that are going in, new traffic signals, all of that is being paid for by the half-cent sales tax. We also have electric franchise fees. So there's a small fee on your electric bill, and that is used to fund economic development and road and bridge. So that is how we are resurfacing roads, is through that fee. And that is kind of like a permitting fee, if you will, for the right-of-way. So those power poles are in our right-of-way, and that's the fee kind of to use that right-of-way. We also, the Road and Bridge Fund is also funded by the gas tax. So it's roughly 12 cents that you pay in Santa Rosa County gas tax on a gallon of gas. And that is going directly. It's a restrictive tax. And so it has to go to very specific things related to transportation.
I'm glad you mentioned that there are certain restrictions to some of the revenue streams we bring in. Can you touch just briefly on tourist, like the tourist development tax, the bed tax, and how there are quite a few restrictions on that as well? Like we can't go out and pave a road with tourist tax.
Correct. So yes, we receive roughly $6 million roundabout in tourist development tax. It is very restrictive, and a percentage of it has to go to advertising to bring in more tourists. It can go to events that bring in tourists. It can go to some facilities and recreational items that are bringing in tourists. But it cannot pave roads. It cannot go for transportation-related items. As of this year, they did change the statute that does allow us to use it for lifeguards. So it's a little over $1 million a year for the lifeguards on the beach. And so as of this year, we are able to pay that out of the tourist development tax because, of course, there are many residents that utilize the beach, but there are also many more tourists. And so we're able to provide that service through that funding source.
That's really great because lifeguards are definitely very important on our beaches.
Yes.
They do an amazing job out there. We're very proud of our lifeguards.
Yes.
Go team. All right, so let's jump ahead a little bit. You may have already mentioned this, but if you have, can you go ahead and reiterate the percentage of the county budget that is funded through property tax?
That's a great question, Sarah. So roughly 42% of our budget is funded by the property tax. So we have various funding sources. We have the landfill. We have Navarre Beach Utility. We have the inspection department. All of those are considered enterprise funds. So they're kind of like mini businesses, if you will, and they fund themselves. And so that is part of our budget. We have to have a complete and balanced budget. We must present to the commissioners every July, and so we cannot run a deficit like the federal government. We have to be balanced, and all of our revenues and have to match what we're expending.
How does Santa Rosa County compare to other counties in the state with lower or higher populations?
Okay, so we have in the Panhandle, we have Escambia County, Okaloosa, Bay, Walton. Those are kind of the Panhandle counties we compare ourselves to. Throughout the state, we also have Charlotte, Hernando, and Indian River, and those counties have roughly the same population we do. So right now we're running about 206,000 people in the county. Escambia County has about 335,000. Okaloosa is slightly ahead of us at 224,000. And Walton has 89,000. So they are slightly behind us, but they are growing like we are as well. So in general, over the total county revenue, so that's our municipalities, that's everything, we're usually 52% less than the state average. So we're roughly, per capita, taking all of our county revenue, we're about $1,300 per capita, whereas of those comparable counties, Charlotte County is at $3,600. So we're substantially less when you're comparing us. And so when your overall revenue is less, that affects impact fees. So we hear very often how people want us to charge more for impact fees. We do have impact fees. We have transportation impact fees. We started collections last May, and it generates roughly $3 million a year. But when your overall revenues are low, impact fees are based on the pro rata share. So they are also low because our general taxation is lower. And so the percentage of what those new homes and new businesses pay is comparable to what the existing residents and existing businesses are paying. So it's, again, the pro rata share. So if we have low taxation, you're going to have a low impact fee because, again, it's based on a percentage of the value and the overall cost for things.
Yeah, and impact fees are also restricted because you can't just spend them on anything. You have to spend on what they impact, correct?
Correct. It has to go directly to capacity improvements. So, for example, we cannot resurface a road with impact fees. We can go in and put a new turn lane. We can put in new traffic signals, but it has to be an enhancement. It has to be for a capacity improvement, not just maintaining what we have. So maintaining our roads is our gas tax, our sales tax is what we utilize to do those things.
Yeah, and we are a very large county size-wise, like mass-wise,
Absolutely.
And so we have a lot of roads in the county, and
yes,
we're just barely scratching the surface, it seems.
Yes, we have over 1,500 miles of road. Ideally, we should be resurfacing our roads every 15 years. And if you kind of do the math, we're about every 20 years, 20 to 25 years when we're able to resurface them. Some roads, it just depends on the traffic on them. We're resurfacing them more often than those that do not have as much travel on them. But again, in general, we should be resurfacing about every 15 years.
And that's another reason why a diversification of revenue is so important when you have a county of our size and with that many roads. If you want services, we've got to have the revenue. We've got to have, if you want your road resurfaced, we've got to have the money to do that. And that's probably why we can't always get to your road right when you want us to, but we do care. Our public works team is great, and they're doing a really great job with the limited sources that they have.
Absolutely. That department, back in the recession in the 2000s, we cut several staff members from that department, and it's only been in the last few years that we were able to add the staff back to that department. There is a great mixture of contracting out the services. It's a balancing act sometimes, which we've done in the past. year or so, we've added a crew because it was much cheaper to add the staff in-house to accomplish the service than contracting it out. However, there are other services, for example, in our parks and facilities, we found that contracting out landscaping is much more beneficial and cost effective than hiring the crews to maintain our parks. So we're balancing that out. We still have crews that are cutting our passive parks, but our higher use facilities, we're accomplishing that with the landscaping contractors, again, to provide a better level of service at a better price for our citizens.
All right, so let's touch on something that maybe not everyone thinks about too often. We're very transparent about our purchases. There is a check register on every Board of County Commissioner agenda. People can look through and see what we purchase, but can you talk a little bit more about how we purchase things?
Absolutely. So the state of Florida is very unique. So we set our budget on the Board of County Commissioner side. However, we do not actually have any of our funds. We have a clerk comptroller, which is Mr. Jason English, and so he actually has all of our funds. So right off the bat, every expenditure we have is being reviewed by his staff before it's made. And so not only that, but we have a procurement policy, and we have a multi-layered process that purchases are going through before they're actually made. So anything over $500, which just for the record, the state, their minimum is $2,000, but we've taken it a step further and we've gone to $500. So every purchase over $500 is reviewed by the budget team, it's reviewed by the procurement team, and by the clerk's team. So if a department in Public Works needs to buy pipe, they have to do comparable shopping to make sure that we're getting the best price. Typically a minimum of 3 quotes. It depends on the threshold of the purchase they're making. And then once they've done the comparable shopping, then they put it through our system. Budget reviews it to make sure it's a budgeted item. Procurement reviews it to make sure they follow the appropriate procurement process. And then we authorize them to make the purchase. And then once they do that, then the invoice goes to the clerk's office. And then the clerk has kind of the final review of it to make sure whatever purchase we're making is truly a public purpose, that it's going to pay something for the value of our residents.
Great. So speaking of our residents, we have some things out there called MSBUs that help residents accomplish some improvements, maybe like right in their neighborhood. Can you talk just very briefly about MSBUs, kind of what they are if someone's not familiar, and the kinds of things people accomplish with those?
Absolutely. So in Santa Rosa County, we have over 100 MSBUs. Most of those are for lighting. So because we are a lower taxed county, those are kind of considered special services. So not every neighborhood wants lights, but those that do, they approach us. Typically it's the HOA and says, hey, we would like lights in our neighborhood. We go through the process of making sure all the residents in the neighborhood want the lights. So over 50% and plus one has to approve through petition that they would like to receive lighting in their neighborhood. And then we go through the process and it will show up annually on their tax bill. It's considered a non-ad valorem assessment. So it's on your tax bill, property tax bill, but it's not a property tax. It's an assessment. It's a fee that goes directly to pay for a specific service. We also have several private neighborhoods in Santa Rosa County that have gotten to that point where they need to resurface their roads or they're having some stormwater problems. And so the MSBU is a funding mechanism for private HOAs that allow them to provide the enhancements in their neighborhood that are necessary for an aging subdivision, and allow them to pay it over several years, because many HOAs do not have $1 million laying around to pay for resurfacing their roads or stormwater. We also recently implemented a new MSBU for stormwater maintenance, and so that is in our county maintained subdivisions, and it's in the south end of the county. It's $71 per lot. In the north end, it's $35 per lot, and that goes directly for paying for a contractor to maintain those ponds. And this is our first year with it. We have had so many good comments where the citizens are receiving a higher level of service. And we did the math, and this is an example of where we were able to contract this out for under $200,000 a year. Wow. We're servicing over 3,500 lots. And we're providing a higher level of service. And if we had done this in-house with public works crews, it would have been over $500,000 to hire the staff, purchase the equipment necessary to accomplish the same tasks. So again, that's another example of our procurement process, doing some cost-benefit analysis to ensure that we're providing the services our residents need at the best price.
All right. So as we start to wrap things up, if a resident wants to get involved, if they want to have a voice about our budget, if they want to come and talk to us about maybe some ideas they have, when is the best time to get involved when we're developing our budget?
So we had our planning meeting a couple weeks ago, and that kicked off our FY27 budget cycle. We have our next workshop in June, where we will kind of present the draft budget to the commissioners. That's when they make the decision, are they changing that tax rate for property taxes? That's also when we approve new MSBUs. Again, typically those are specific to certain neighborhoods. It's not a county-wide thing. And then by law, the county administrator is responsible for submitting a balanced budget based on those decided tax rates in July. By July 15th, we have to do that. And that is all the information that is printed on your trim notice that goes out in August, is sent out by our property appraiser. And then we adopt the FY27 budget in September. And those are public hearings. You receive notice of that on your trim notice. We also publish that in the newspaper and on our website. And we always encourage citizens to come out. I'm actually meeting with a resident later this week to discuss the budget. My door is always open. If anyone has questions, please send me an email, reach out, and I'm happy to answer the questions and help them understand how we're using their money.
Yes.
And that's one thing that I'm very proud of in our county. The staff and everyone, this is our citizens and our residents. This is your county, and we're here just to make sure we're using your revenues to provide the services that you want.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. If you're looking for our budget, it is always online, santarosa.fl.gov. Just go to the budget department, and all of our budgets are there back to quite a few years.
Yes.
So you can look at some historical information as well. And we encourage you to get involved. Come and attend meetings. If you can't attend a meeting, send an email, give us a call. Our doors are always open. We have a great staff, and they are always willing to talk to our residents about what's going on in Santa Rosa County. So thank you again, Sabrina, for being on our podcast today. Tune in for the next one coming up soon for the Shop Talk podcast. Thanks for joining us.